Okay, and how long were you a Mason for?
9 years.
And how high up did you go?
Well, I went through the typical Blue Lodge degrees, went through York Rite all the way up to the Knights Templar Commandery, went through the Scottish Rite all the way up to 32nd degree, and at that time, then I was considered worthy to get into what is called esoteric Freemasonry, which most American Masons don't even know exist. And in that organization, I was admitted into the Rite of Memphis Mitzrayim, and I went up to 90th degree, which a lot of Masons, if they even hear that, they will, you know, their false teeth will fall on their heads. But there are actually at least 97 degrees in the higher level esoteric rites.
From your experience?
From my experience.
I've actually heard there's 360 degrees with Satan at the top. Do you know if that's true or not?
I have no idea if that's true or not. I have heard that too, but for my information, I can only speak to that there's 90.
Right. Were you surprised when you found that there were more than 33 degrees?
No, not really. See, here's how this works. When I went through the Masonic rituals, I had the spirit guides in my ear whispering things, telling me to do things, telling me to answer certain things in certain ways. Because I did that, I was identified by the leadership of the Grand Lodge of the state of Wisconsin that I was someone a little bit extraordinary. And the spirit guides kept prompting me with these things. And I knew, before I was even asked, that there was a Rite of Memphis Mitzrayim because the spirit guides told me so.
Wow.
And see, that's one of the ways in which I ultimately got contacted by the Illuminati, is because the spirit guides had given me certain key things to say, key things to do, even gestures to make, stuff like that, that would identify me as being someone who was worthy of more light. Because see, that's what they promise in all the Masonic degrees. They say, you know, you get light, you get further light, you get more light. And of course, where does this light come from? Well, if you read the writings of the Masonic leaders, that comes from Lucifer.
And how many Masons know that?
Maybe 1 in 1,000.
Wow.
The rest are just like cannon fodder. Mm-hmm. They're there to be spiritually drained, spiritually vampirized, financially drained, because Masonry sucks a lot of money out of you. But most of them don't have a clue unless they bothered to toddle upstairs and read the books that are in their own Masonic libraries, like I did.
Okay, thank you. You say that to advance into serious Satanism beyond the Church of Satan level, it would be necessary to complete 2 apparently paradoxical tasks. The first was to join the Order of Freemasons and become a Master Mason, and the other was to receive holy orders and become a Catholic priest. So how many Master Masons know that there are Satanists among them?
I'd say probably the same figure I quoted earlier, 1 in 1,000.
Right.
I knew, just in Milwaukee, I knew at least 5 or 6 Masons that were involved in either witchcraft or Satanism. And one of them was he was a worshipful master. And he never, see, this is one thing people ask you, well, they say, in the higher degrees, is that where you get this stuff? No. This guy had never gotten past Master Mason, but he had worked his way through the chairs, as they say, and become even a worshipful master, which is like the head of the lodge, and was a very serious scholar of Manly P. Hall, who was, again, when he died I think he died in 1984, he was eulogized as the greatest Masonic philosopher of the 20th century. And this guy hated God. He hated religion with a passion. And I remember at one point, one year I went to the Grand Lodge meeting, because I was a lodge officer, and on the floor was a debate as to whether or not we should remove the oaths because they were offensive to some Christians. And this guy got up and just railed on the Christian church and just went on and on. We sure don't let these bleepity-bleep Christians tell us how to run. I mean, this is older than Christianity. This is blah, blah. And he was just going on. And this guy was a very high-level esotericist. And yet he also had an obvious hatred for Christianity. So, I don't know.
Thank you. Since Catholics are strictly forbidden to be Masons, why were you being asked to do 2 opposite things?
Well, first of all, this whole thing about, you know, in Illuminism, there's this idea of creating a false dichotomy. What people don't realize is that the Catholic Church helped start the Masons. And that, for example, the Scottish Rite most of the degrees in the Scottish Rite were written by Jesuits. So even though there is this apparent antipathy between the Masons and the Catholics, to the point that up until John Paul II's reign, if you became a Mason, you were a Roman Catholic, you were de facto excommunicated, just like that. But actually it's all a sham, because most of the high level of people in the Vatican are all Freemasons, and many of the people that are Freemasons are Catholics.
Why do they have the sham? What do they get out of that?
Well, originally, you see, it's like the old Hegelian idea, which he actually got from the Illuminati, of thesis, antithesis, synthesis. You have two opposing things, and they fight, and they come together, and they create a, and in this case, the idea would be to create a one-world religion out of these two opposites. The two things come together, and they merge. And that's actually happening right now before our very eyes. Because, for example, I don't know this, but I have serious reason to believe that the new Pope is in fact a Freemason. The old Pope who just died was a Freemason. The Pope before him was a Freemason.
How do you know
that? The
that?
Pope before him was not only a Freemason, but a Rosicrucian.
How do you know that?
Well, the Angelo Roncalli, who was John the 23rd, he was a member of a very high-level Rosicrucian Masonic order. There are records to that effect, and that's been documented in a book called The Broken Cross. I forget the author, but you can look it up on the internet, I'm sure. Paul VI created, he enlarged the College of Cardinals. And just by coincidence, almost all the cardinals, he took archbishops and made them cardinals. That's what the Pope does. Almost every one of those cardinals, those new cardinals, were Freemasons. Now, by inference, we can assume that he was probably a Freemason, but that's only circumstantial. When John Paul II was shot, he gave the Grand Masonic Hailing Sign of Distress.
Oh, okay.
Which is what Masons do when they're in dire straits. Also, John Paul II is the Pope who issued the bull, which is what, like a papal decree, it's called a papal bull, that basically removed the ban on Freemasonry.
Oh, okay.
Which is also somewhat telling. So, to answer your question, the antipathy there is more dodgy.
Wow.
So the actual secret is that Masonry is a sex cult.
Wow.
And that's why they wear their apron over their Holy of Holies. Just like there's a veil in the Temple of Solomon that covers the holy place where the Ark of the Covenant is. Well, this is the Holy of Holies of the Mason. That's why Masonic monuments are obelisks. Like Washington's monument, the largest obelisk in the world. He was a Freemason. It's a giant phallic symbol.
It's all there for everyone to see.
That is what the Masons mean by resurrection.
Wow.
If you go to a Masonic funeral, they talk about the sure and certain hope of the resurrection. That's not, when they say that word, they don't mean what all the nice, Christian people sitting in their chairs think they mean. They're talking about the fact that the phallus dies and then rises again.
Wow, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the problems with Freemasonry?
Well, I think some of it would be rather obvious, but
right.
Well, basically, it's its own religion. It's a religion which does not honor Yeshua, Jesus Christ, and it is a religion that demands people that they do things that are contrary to the commandments of God. And let me explain that.